Hello, Slice and Dicers. This is Oliver. Daniel's out this week, so we're gonna mix it up a little bit. Guest this week is Anthony, who we've had on previous episodes, and I guess we'll move right along to story time. The topic for this week, we're doing sort of giving life to a character and having it develop. So maybe you can give us something that's one of your interesting characters where you've had quite a few.
Oh, I'd say probably the character that I've had the most fun playing so far was He was a Skald. He had an
The
intelligence
infamous
of...
Rob Vargas.
Yes, Rob Vargas. He was a Skald in Pathfinder. He had an intelligence of 4, but he had a charisma of 22. And as far as I remember, he had a pretty good strength and constitution stat as well.
And I think
But
your wisdom was like 6.
yeah, his mental stats weren't so great, except for maybe charisma. But I had a lot of fun playing him, just because it's one of those times where you can do stuff that makes absolutely no sense just for the sake of being fun, and it fits the character perfectly. I think one of the times that sticks out to me is the party ended up in this, like, a shop or something, but with a mage, and we were basically given handouts. So it's like, okay, what kind of powerful magical artifact do you want? And he didn't say that exactly, but that's
Yeah.
essentially what ended up happening. But my character having an intelligence of 4 and a wisdom of, I guess, 6 and a charisma of 22, of course, what he wanted was a pipe organ that he could play whenever he wanted to. So what the mage ended up giving him was a pipe organ in the form of a book. What it would happen is, if you were to open the book and place it on the ground, the pipe organ would essentially erupt out of it. And I think it was like a 5 foot by 10 foot or something like that, or
Yeah.
5 foot by 15 foot.
Yeah, it was a full wall pipe organ that was a pop-up book.
And there were some interesting shenanigans had with that pipe organ. I believe one time I think it was like a church of undead or something that we were going into, and my character, with his terrible intelligence and wisdom, wouldn't know that, hey, undead can't be, like, influenced by music and any of that shit, but he didn't care. I think he was surrounded, or the party was surrounded at one point, because this is another interesting part, which may slightly relate to this, is we had... Our party was interesting. We had a summoner who had a Naga-type summon, and Rob attempted to use the Naga-type summon as a weapon in a cleaver whirlwind. I can't remember which one.
It
And
was
rolled
a
horribly.
whirlwind.
I think the very first attack on that whirlwind was a natural 1, which ended up flinging both Rob and the Naga directly into the middle of all of the undead.
She was not happy with you for the rest of the campaign.
Apparently not. But so what does this Skald barbarian hybrid do when he's surrounded by enemies? Well, he doesn't care what type of enemies he are. What he does is he fucking opens up the pipe organ book and lays it down in front of him, which actually kind of helps out because he can only be attacked from the limited amount of squares around him. But what he ended up doing was jumping up on the pipe organ and playing it with his feet in an attempt to calm the undead as they were, like, attempting to strike him down from the top of the pipe organ. Which, apparently, what that managed to do was distract the undead enough that the party were able to wipe them out. But, I mean, as far as interesting ways to resolve a situation, I'd say that was probably some of the most fun I've had. I believe there were, like, balance checks and performance checks, and trying not to fall off into the horde of zombies and other assorted undead that were trying to eat me.
I'll have to admit, I was DMing this, and the whole time, this whole combat, I was doing my best not to laugh my ass off, picturing this 8-foot tall, like, ripped, like, buff, but incredibly dumb guy just trying to dance and, like, charm undead. It was hilarious to me.
So basically, if you've seen the Mad Max movie, the recent Mad Max movie, it was basically like the scene with the, I think it was the Doofbro or whatever it was, in the car with the organ in the background where he was playing it with his feet with the electric guitar. is my character also had an axe, which was an axe and a guitar. So it was basically that, which was completely useless in this situation. But it looked awesome.
That was one of the great things about Rob, is that he just made things awesome. He didn't care how successful. I mean, you screwed over the party several times, but it was
nobody
always
died
fun.
during it. I think at one point during a boss battle against things that actually might have been useful against him, when I was playing the pipe organ, didn't I like blow holes in the roof or something? I don't remember. But I think it was.
All of the antics of Rob, they all run together. I think my favorite story of him was when you were meeting with the scholar, and he was describing the weapon encampments on this on this fortress, and you and the summoner really had no experience with guns. And he referred to them with the fire. He referred to them as firearms, and you're like these, and lights his arms on fire and just flexes both arms. Just iconic
that was the
moment.
use of one of my, yeah, and that was a complete waste of one of my. So that was a spell-like ability my character had, where he could basically do that and like punch people. And I think he only had like 1 or 2 uses per day, and he like completely wasted it on doing that. But it didn't matter.
It didn't matter because it got the scholar had no reaction to it. It's just how does this guy breathe? And just the party died laughing. It's moments like that that really make D&D. It's the parts that are remembered. So that was some great stories from a great character, Anthony. So from there, I guess we'll move on to the encounter with, I guess, sort of the topic we have. How do you really give life, and when you're creating a character, really define its personality that you play and you run with? Because, I mean, if you're running a good campaign, you could be playing this character for as much as a couple of years.
Mm-hmm. I think Rob was certainly one of the characters I had with the most personality. But what I think really helps out as far as essentially playing your character is, and I think actually 5th edition makes it pretty easy, or at least makes it a lot easier than it normally would be. Is the whole like, okay, what are 1 or 2 things your character really wants to do? Like, what drives the character? Does he want to grow rich? Does he want to grow, I don't know, influential? Does he just want to explore the countryside? And also, what are some of the character flaws? So, is he obsessive? Will he attempt to go for his goals without any kind of regards to the party? Because you can have some really interesting party mechanics if, for example, what your character would do is something that's not in the party's best interest, and then the other characters in your party call you out on it.
Oh yeah, I know. I've run several characters where the actions that I was making were not in the best interests of most of the party, but it was what my character was going to do. As we've stated, I've blown myself up several times because impulsive character, not doing, the self-preservation that, most gamers are sort of inclined to do of, power game, this is the best situation, but it's going to be the most fun or most true to what you feel this character you've made would do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with that, one of your big things with creating a character is you need to be, while having a big, extensive backstory can sometimes help you, you also need to be flexible and open to change as you're going into the campaign.
Right. Because character-changing events can happen. Like, for example, if your character almost dies doing something, that's a perfectly valid reason to say maybe have an alignment shift, or maybe start, I don't know, having a slightly different personality.
Oh,
I think one of Sean Don's characters, I can't remember which campaign it was in, but I think it was the one where we were doing the Epic campaign. He changed his character quite a bit, I think, the first time that his character essentially died.
Yes, and that's one thing that's, is sort of glazed over a bunch, and depending on your DM, death may happen a lot. Some DMs are nice and it doesn't happen. But depending on how much you're willing to bring back, I had my top favorite character I ever played died 3 times. The first 2 times when I was playing him were due to a side effect of our lawful good cleric triggering a side effect and having me blown up. So each time that happened, my character started off neutral, and by before his redemption arc, he was chaotic evil.
It's you can never tell which way you're gonna roll whenever you have to save against Soundburst, I guess.
Yes, and being around high explosives, isn't the safest career path.
Yep.
But as we've stated, you need to have fun, and if something zany happens, roll with it. Sometimes just a running joke can make things even better can make the entire campaign better than some page and a half backstory you wrote. If one time you tripped and fell down the stairs or blew up a bowl of pretzels.
Daniel's wizard blowing up that pretzel. He's never gonna live that one down.
No, we're never gonna let him live that down. And that's a joke that can run into, life as you're hanging out. It's how you build sort of the inside jokes that your group of friends is gonna understand it, and you're all gonna bust out laughing in public, and no one's going to understand it. That's kind of one of the positives and negatives of D&D is, you do build a close knit with lots of inside jokes with the people you're playing it with.
The group you're playing with, especially if you've been playing with them for a long time, some of the actions, some of the outcomes, and some of the characters you make are going to stick around for a lot longer than you would think.
I know several times I've had in campaigns I've ran where I've brought back characters that people have played in the past as, they come in as either like heroes or NPCs or, just legends and stories. Just something that your player base, or maybe if it's a new player base, won't really understand, but it'll sort of build some character and you can tell some stories along with it.
Right, because one of the great things is if you have a character who you've been playing with or you've been playing for a long time, if you were to join a new group or maybe the group starts a different session, depending on the time period maybe or the world, you could very well write one of your older characters into your current character's backstory.
Oh yeah, I know. Our friend Ty, for one of the groups he was running with, he asked his DM for permission to use the character who was running in my campaign to be the mentor for the character he was running in that campaign. And the DM was running in my campaign, so he knew the character, and he's like, yeah, that seems like a fun idea, and I'll allow it. I mean, it's that kind of stuff where because of that, he had a better understanding of what his character was going to be. I know, sort of getting into D&D, it's pretty intimidating trying to figure out how to roleplay.
Yep.
And that's sort of what we're getting at here is you need to be loose, and creating a backstory is good, but you just have to, you gotta let it shape up and let it flow, get into the mindset of the character, and just have fun with it.
And I know getting in the mindset of the character, when I was first starting off with D&D, was actually something I had a hard time with, just because I was used to playing like games on the PC or on the consoles or whatever, where it's like, okay, you encounter this type of enemy, this is exactly what you would need to do in order to kill it the fastest possible way, or whatever it is. So, really, if your character is, let's say is an intelligence of 10, so about average, and you're fighting, I don't know, like, say a beholder or some other extraplanar creature, which he would have no idea how to even fight this thing. There's no way that, for example, if your character has never encountered a Medusa and has no idea what they are, he wouldn't know to, for example, reach out to a mirror and try to have it
Yeah,
look at itself or anything like that.
that's
And
one
I
of
know
the that's
there've
one of
been a
the
couple
things.
times when I've been playing earlier where I've definitely done that on not even on purpose, but on accident, just because I was so used to it. But it just takes a little bit of getting used to.
Yeah, that's one of the things. It's something you learn, and it's similar to the stories we were talking earlier about the uh, you have to be smart to be dumb, where you
Mm.
learn how to play your character just by doing. You learn how to act. You learn kind of what a character would know just by sort of doing it. And it's one of those things that no matter how long you do it, you're always going to improve, and every character you do, you're going to pick something up from or enhance, whether it be, you know, the character you started at level 1 and you got all the way to level 17, or the one-off character you're created for a random campaign. Generally, you're going to pick up something every time you play D&D.
Mm. And this actually works in the back can work to your advantage in backstories as well. So let's say, for example, you're in a campaign and there are two warring factions, and let's say that your character was in the military for one of them. So knowing that, you could work into your backstory. Maybe you have a little bit more knowledge on these types of foes, this type of combat scenario, what you would do in these types of situations. You can really just you don't even really have to be specific. Just having a general sort of idea of what this character's life has been up to this point and really help shape what you're trying to do. Because, for example, if your character was in the military and and your party is faced with, like, let's say, a really heavy combat situation where there's a lot of people, you might act in a certain way. Whereas if your character was a thief from the streets who was raised on the streets, has no real combat experience whatsoever, they may not react in the same manner. And it can lead to some really interesting party dynamics when everybody tries to split up, everybody tries to stay together, or whoever can inspire whoever it is in your party.
And as similar sort of things, gaining skills, and one of the great things about giving a character life is you learn how to bullshit and use the core things you have and spin it in a way that can work for you. I know one of the famous ones you brought up being a soldier was in the campaign where Sean's like, he was playing a soldier, and he said in his past he would have learned to do field repairs on this broken carriage. So he's asked if he could use his skill as a soldier rather than a craft or repair skill to make a splint to sort of get this carriage rolling again. And, he gave his reasoning, and as a DM, I allowed it. And that's one thing as well for a DM, is let your players build character as well. I know a lot of DMs will have sort of, they sort of get the gist of what they think their player is going for and sort of try to help shape them. And while that's good and sort of giving them opportunities, let them develop on their own as well.
You can basically, it's like you can give them a nudge or give them opportunities, but they're really, I guess, unless this is a very specific situation in your campaign and where it's quote unquote on rails, it's better just to let the character sort of make their own choices rather than forcing them into particular situations. So if that's what the particular arc needs, I suppose you can go for it.
Yeah, sometimes a campaign needs rails. Sometimes a group of players needs rails. And that's one of the things with a DM, is knowing what your players need to develop and what a story that is being told needs to develop, and kind of making that mesh, that balance, work out.
Right, and some of the things I think works out well for both sides is, for example, if a player has some goals that they would like to do in the campaign, because then you can talk about it with your GM and you can sort of world build as you go along. And I think that makes both the player and the DM more invested, just because they've talked about it, they've brainstormed about it, they have sort of ideas as to how to make things happen.
Yeah, and it gives the character life, but it also ends up giving the world life, and gives the world some character that the player can get connected to.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that'll probably do it for this week. And thank you, Anthony, for coming on. And
You're welcome.
until next time, don't roll too many ones.